You didn't click on this video by accident. Something brought you here, and it wasn't luck, or the algorithm, or casual curiosity. It was a subtler force, invisible, a frequency that called you without using words. Maybe you can't explain it, but you felt it. A discomfort deep in your chest. A whisper telling you, something's wrong with your reality. That's what the ancients called the silent calling. And among all the names given to this calling, one stands out, Thoth. Thoth wasn't just an Egyptian god. He was the archetype of hidden knowledge, the master of wisdom that can't be taught with words, only with vibration. He doesn't convince you with logic. He activates you, and that changes everything. Because when that activation happens, nothing seems to make sense anymore. And at the same time, everything starts to fall into place, and that's exactly where you are now. Imagine a knowledge so powerful it couldn't be handed over directly. A truth so deep that, if it were said literally, it would be rejected, misunderstood, or even destroyed. Thoth knew that. That's why he hid the most powerful teachings within symbols, metaphors, and vibrational patterns. He spoke to time. He wrote for those who weren't even born yet. And he left a map. But not an ordinary map. A map that can only be read with an awakened heart. Because it doesn't point to places. It reveals frequencies. Maybe you're expecting something obvious, a direct explanation, a secret you can memorize. But Thoth never wanted that. What he left behind can't be taught. It can only be activated. And that activation happens when your mind starts to slow down and the inner silence begins to grow. It's not about what you learn. It's about what you begin to remember. Everything he said pointed to one thing. The reality you know is a shell built to keep consciousness asleep. And what lies behind that shell can only be perceived when you start to vibrate differently. Not when you study, not when you understand, but when something inside you begins to align with what has always been there, waiting, latent, silent. And here's something few people notice. That calling is never loud. It doesn't come with fireworks, visions, or miracles. It sneaks in as a persistent feeling that there's something beyond. Like the world you live in is a poorly rendered simulation. Colors seem duller, days feel the same, goals lose their excitement. And it's in that emptiness that the calling seeps in. This is the moment Thoth knew would come. The exact point where the seeker begins to doubt what they were taught, starts to feel that time is strange, that life's repetitions are suspicious, that there's a code running behind the appearance of things. And he left clues for this moment. Clues that aren't catchy phrases. They're codes that stir your energy field without you realizing it. Patterns that repeat in dreams, symbols that follow you, numbers that show up with almost absurd frequency. You think you're going paranoid, but you're not. It's just the calling vibrating in you. The most interesting part is that Thoth didn't want followers. He didn't see himself as a savior or a master to be worshipped. He was a provocateur, an awakener of consciousness. And he made it clear. I didn't come to bring answers. I came to bring the right question. Because he knew awakening doesn't happen when someone explains everything to you, but when you can no longer accept the same old explanations. And that's where everything begins. This is the 0 point of the journey. The moment when reality starts to creak, and you feel, even without proof, that something's about to be revealed. But pay attention. This is only the beginning. Because the question Thoth left echoing through time is more dangerous than any answer. And that question is now starting to form inside you. Why did he encode his teachings in symbols instead of words? Why hide the truth instead of proclaiming it? Maybe because he knew the truth can't be taught to someone who's still asleep. Have you ever felt that something's wrong with the world? Something you can't explain, but that keeps triggering a strange feeling, like you learned everything the right way, just like they told you to. And even so, nothing really fits. The promises they made didn't come true. The truths they taught you feel fragile, and deep down, you feel something's missing. Thoth knew this exactly, because he saw beyond the surface. To him, the mind wasn't just a bunch of random thoughts like most people believe. The mind was a field, a vibrational field, and more than that, a mechanism that directly interacts with matter, but not in a passive way. It shapes matter. It imprints frequencies into the fabric of reality. Now stop and think with me. If your mind is a field that shapes reality, who programmed that field? Maybe you think you were born free, that your ideas are your own, that your worldview comes from your experience. But Thoth said otherwise. He claimed there are mental layers that were placed over the mind's original structure, false layers, built with repeated stories, collective traumas, limiting beliefs. All of that forms a kind of invisible armor that filters what you perceive. You think you're seeing reality, but you're only seeing a controlled version of it. That structure has had many names throughout history: Maya, Matrix, illusion, veil, but deep down it's always the same thing. A set of mental codes that keep you from noticing what's really going on. And the most dangerous part is that this programming doesn't hurt you violently. It comforts you. It makes you accept. It convinces you it's normal to live tired, insecure, lost, disconnected from yourself. And do you know what the biggest proof is that this works? You live in a world where most people don't question why things are the way they are. They accept. They repeat. They survive within a system designed to drain their energy without giving them clarity in return. And that's not a coincidence. It's vibrational engineering. Thoth understood this like few others. He knew that to break this programming, a fracture was necessary, an internal crack, something that would snap the seeker out of collective hypnosis. That's why he never offered a ready-made path. He offered symbols, metaphors, vibrational triggers, because he didn't want to give you answers. He wanted to provoke the right question, and that question is starting to echo inside you. Why does your life feel like it's on repeat mode? Why do the same emotional patterns show up again and again, like they're stuck on a scratched record? Is that just coincidence, bad luck, or is it programming? The veil of illusion isn't made of obvious lies. It's built with half-truths, with convenient beliefs, with dogmas disguised as logic. And the more you try to fit into what's expected of you, the more you feel like you're drifting away from yourself. But here's the most delicate point. Tearing this veil requires something not everyone is willing to face, because the first fracture doesn't happen in the outer world. It happens inside. When you begin to question your own identity, when you realize that many of the certainties you carry were placed there without your consent, and worse, when you discover that much of what you consider you was a construction based on fear. It's in this moment that the true seeker begins to emerge, because the pain of the fracture is the first sign of freedom. The mental confusion, the emotional discomfort, the feeling of being lost are not signs of failure. They're signs that the veil is starting to shift. But Thoth warned, this process is not reversible. Some who touch the original vibration, who managed to break through the first layer, were never the same again. Because once you feel what it's like to vibrate in a real state, everything false begins to fall apart. Relationships, beliefs, careers, habits, anything that doesn't support vibrational truth collapses. And that collapse is scary, because it feels like everything is going wrong. But in reality, everything is trying to reorganize. And that's when many give up. It's in that gray zone between the old that no longer works and the new that hasn't manifested yet that most people go back to the old programming. Because the mind loves the familiar, even if the familiar is a cycle of suffering. But what about you? Are you ready to keep going when the ground starts disappearing? Because touching that original vibration isn't just a moment of spiritual bliss. It's a process of deep deconstruction, a reunion with parts of yourself that were asleep, silenced, forgotten. And those parts, they don't come back quietly. So I ask you with total honesty, are you ready to look in the mirror and see who you really are without the filters? Because if you've made it this far, you're no longer at the point of return. And when you find yourself with no escape, when you can no longer pretend that reality is how they taught you it was, an inevitable question begins to rise. If everything around me is collapsing, then what, after all, is holding up what I call life? That's where Thoth steps in with one of the most challenging and, at the same time, liberating teachings that ever existed. He said the mind is not this tangle of thoughts, desires, and memories floating around inside your head. The mind is a field, an emitting field, a full-time vibrational transmitter. And what it emits, it receives back. It's not a philosophical concept, it's functional. You vibrate, the field responds. Always. It doesn't matter if you're aware of it or not. The reality you're living right now is an exact return of what you carry inside. Not what you want, but what you vibrate. And yes, there's a huge difference between wanting something and vibrating that something. That's why so many people get frustrated with the famous positive thinking, because it doesn't help to repeat pretty phrases if, on the inside, you vibrate fear, doubt, guilt, or lack. Vibration doesn't respond to what you say on the surface. It responds to what you actually feel as you live, as you breathe, as you react to the little things. Thoth called this correspondence. As above, so below. What's inside projects outward. That's not a poetic metaphor. It's a real mechanism. And here's the detail that changes everything. It's not the world that shapes your mind. It's your mind that shapes the world. And when I say mind, I'm not talking about your biological brain. I'm talking about your vibrational emission, your mental emotional field that's constantly transmitting signals. Those signals interact with the vibrational fabric of the universe. And that's when everything starts responding. People, situations, opportunities, challenges. Everything that shows up in your life resonates with something you're emitting. And maybe you're wondering, so am I to blame for everything bad that happens to me? No. And at the same time, yes. But not with guilt, with responsibility. Because if you understand that everything responds to your frequency, then there's no room left to feel like a passive victim. You are a transmitter, and the universe is listening. Now, imagine this on a global scale. Billions of transmitters vibrating fear, scarcity, separation. What does the field return? Exactly that. A fragmented, unequal, violent, disconnected world. Not because someone wanted it that way, but because the collective vibration generates it by default. And if you keep vibrating within that same pattern, even with good intentions, you're still feeding the structure. The secret is getting out of the dominant frequency. And that's not something you do just with meditation or positive thinking. You do it with vibrational truth. With inner alignment, with conscious choices, with presence, and most of all, with emotional integrity. Because the field doesn't respond to your speech, it responds to your coherence. If you want peace but live in inner conflict, the field receives conflict. If you want abundance but vibrate scarcity every time you look at your bank account, the field registers scarcity. If you want love but carry unresolved pain, the field receives pain, and it gives back exactly that. This is the point Thoth emphasized the most. There's no point trying to change the world out there if you keep emitting the same frequency that created it. The turning point is in aligning with the original pattern of creation, a pattern of harmony, expansion, clarity. Not an abstract idea, but a vibration that can be felt, lived, sustained. and it changes everything. But this is where the real challenge begins, because getting out of the programmed vibration hurts. It feels like the world is falling apart. Relationships crumble, plans lose meaning, and on the outside, everything seems to be going wrong. But inside, something starts vibrating differently, and the field feels it. It feels when you change, and it responds fast. And when the field starts responding quickly and intensely, you feel that something greater has been activated. It's no longer just about thoughts or emotions. It's like a frequency is operating behind your reality, silently rearranging the pieces of the game. This is the point where Thoth's ancient writings become even more mysterious. Because among the emerald tablets, between symbols most people ignore, there's a mention of something he never directly named. A code, not written, not spoken. A sound that isn't sound. A vibration that can't be described, only felt. This code wasn't a metaphor, it was real. And according to the oldest records, it was used precisely in sacred rituals, in healing ceremonies, in the construction of temples, and even in the alignment of celestial bodies. But Thoth knew this knowledge couldn't be handed over like a formula, so he hid the code where few would dare to look, in the symbols, in the sounds, and in the numbers. Why would he do that? Because this frequency isn't just powerful, it's dangerous. Not in the sense of doing harm, but in the sense of completely breaking the structure of ordinary reality. Once activated, it starts dissolving the illusion, layer by layer. And for someone unprepared, that can cause emotional, existential, and even energetic collapse. That's why he encoded it, to protect, to prevent this key from being used as a mental trick, because it doesn't activate through effort. It activates through coherence, and then here's the most mysterious point. You don't learn this frequency, you recognize it. As if it was already inside you, asleep, waiting for the right moment to vibrate again. And that moment doesn't come with noise, it comes in silence, in surrender. When the mind stops trying to control and the heart begins to align with what's true, this code vibrates like a kind of ancestral memory. It doesn't teach something new. It reminds you of something your soul already knew before you were even born. And maybe, right now, you're feeling it. A subtle discomfort, an emotion without a name, a vibration in your body you can't explain. That's it. That's the approach of this frequency. It shows up in unexpected ways. Sometimes as a chill for no reason, sometimes as a symbolic dream that feels more real than waking life, sometimes as a deep urge to leave behind everything fake and run towards something you don't even know yet. It doesn't matter how it shows up, it always brings a rupture. Because this frequency doesn't show up to comfort you, it shows up to rearrange everything. And only those who are internally coherent can hold this vibration. It's not about perfection, it's about truth, about vibrational authenticity. Because this code doesn't respond to titles or appearances or pretty speeches. It responds to those who are in real alignment with what they feel, what they think, and what they do. And that's why so many have searched for this sound but few have found it. Because you can't force it. You can't chase it with urgency or anxiety. It only reveals itself when you stop hiding from yourself. Now I need to ask you, has this frequency already found you? Because if it has, even just for a second, it's already started working. And if it's already started working, you're probably already noticing. Situations that used to seem normal now deeply bother you. People who were part of your life suddenly drift away. Things you believed in start to fall apart. But this isn't bad luck, chaos, or coincidence. This is the mirror beginning to reflect more intensely. Thoth said the universe doesn't have a reward and punishment system like we were taught. It doesn't operate with morality, judgment, or lack. It doesn't reward the ones who pray more, nor punish those who make mistakes. It simply reflects. It shows with mathematical precision what you're vibrationally holding in your field. It doesn't give you what you want. It shows you what you are. And maybe this is where things start to feel uncomfortable. Because for a long time, you believed that wishing hard was enough, that being a good person was enough, that working hard was enough for things to change. But now you're standing in front of a simple and relentless truth. The universe doesn't respond to your effort. It responds to your vibration. And here's where the real danger lies. Because when you start aligning, when you start truly waking up, the field takes you seriously. It speeds up. It responds more precisely. And that means everything that's still disorganized inside you also starts showing up faster, including the traumas, including the pain, including the unconscious patterns you thought you'd already healed. This is the point where many give up, because they expected awakening to be a path of peace, light, and wholeness. But Thoth warned, awakening is crossing the mirror, and seeing what's on the other side takes courage. Because what shows up first isn't the light, it's the mess, it's the shadow. It's everything you've hidden from yourself for so long that you didn't even know it was still there. The universe starts showing you, with brutal clarity, everything you still need to realign. It brings relationships that expose your wounds, situations that highlight your insecurities, tests that throw your lack of coherence in your face. And it doesn't do this to punish you. It does it because you vibrated the request for change. And to change, you have to face it. You can't run anymore. You can't ignore it anymore. And here's the key almost nobody wants to hear. If deep down you're vibrating fear, insecurity, or worthlessness, it doesn't matter how much you say you want to prosper, to love, or to evolve. The field is going to respond to whatever's stronger, and what's stronger is almost always what's hidden. So now you understand why some cycles never break, why you move to another city, but the same problems show up, why you change relationships, but the same pattern repeats, why you try 1,000 different projects, but the end result always feels the same. It's the mirror, not in a symbolic way, in an exact, real, operational way. And the more you tune in with truth, the faster the mirror reflects. That's scary, but it's also liberating. Because if you learn to hold a new vibration with awareness, you'll watch the field rearrange your life with such precision, it'll feel like magic. But it's not. It's vibrational response. The universe is a mirror that doesn't lie. It doesn't sugarcoat. It doesn't filter. And if the reflection coming back to you is the opposite of what you want, maybe it's time to stop trying to change the outside world and take a more honest look at what's still silently vibrating inside you. And when you start looking inward with more honesty, something different happens. Your outer vision changes. The same images, symbols, drawings you've always seen now seem to be emitting something you can't explain, but you feel. It's like there's an intelligence behind the details. And it's not just your imagination, it's real. Thoth knew that, and that's why he never wrote like others. He didn't describe the world, he coded frequencies. Every symbol he left behind wasn't just some spiritual ornament or religious representation. It was vibrational technology, pure, precise, intentional. Every line, every proportion, every geometric form carried a specific energetic signature. It wasn't art, it was architecture of the unseen, a living language, an activation field. The flower of life, for example, might seem like just a pretty pattern. But when you look at it with focus and presence, you begin to feel something beyond the visual. You feel a field moving, a soft expansion in your chest, a quiet forming inside. It's like something is being realigned within you. And it is, because the flower of life isn't a fixed symbol. It's a pattern pulsing at the same frequency as creation. The Eye of Horus goes beyond just being an Egyptian icon. It represents the eye that sees without judgment, that perceives without filters, that sees the invisible field where everything happens before it becomes matter. Meditating on this symbol, connecting with it consciously, can unlock intuitive perceptions that have been asleep for years. You don't start imagining more. You start perceiving what was always there but outside your vibrational reach. And the Ankh, that strange cross with an oval loop, isn't just the symbol of eternal life. It's a closed circuit of energy, a representation of the flow between heaven and earth, between masculine and feminine, between the seen and the unseen. Those who meditate deeply on this symbol begin to experience their life energy being reorganized. Your body responds, your field recalibrates, your internal axis shifts. These symbols weren't created to be understood. They were made to be experienced. They act like keys that unlock ancestral vibrational codes inside you, and you don't need to understand how. You just need to be present with them, breathe with them, feel. Because vibrational language isn't logical, it's direct, and when it touches your field, it silently transforms your inner structure. And here's the part that few people understand. Just visual contact with these codes is enough to start an energetic recalibration process. You might be scrolling your screen absent-mindedly and suddenly come across one of these symbols, and something inside you shifts. A memory surfaces, an old emotion rises, a new meaning appears where before there was only noise. It's not magic, it's vibrational engineering. But now comes the warning, because just as these forms can awaken deep wisdom, they can also activate parts of your field that were asleep for a reason. Using these symbols without preparation, without emotional grounding, without internal coherence can cause more imbalance than alignment. They're not decorations, they're portals, and like any portal, they require responsibility to cross. And maybe what you're about to access now isn't just a symbol or a spiritual concept, but an entire field of realities that were waiting for the right moment to emerge. Because when you access these symbolic fields, you're not just seeing images, you're releasing frequencies. Frequencies that reorganize, frequencies that heal, frequencies that activate. But there's one that surpasses all the others. A tool even more powerful because it's used all the time, almost always unconsciously. The Word. Thoth knew this before anyone else. To him, the Word wasn't a means of communication. It was a tool of creation, and not symbolic or metaphorical creation. Real, tangible, concrete creation. The Word shapes. The Word activates. The Word instructs the field. When you speak, you vibrate. But it's not just the sound that carries power. It's the inner state behind it. The vibration that comes with the sound. The intention hidden between the syllables. That's why two people can say exactly the same thing, and the universe responds in completely different ways. You can repeat a sacred mantra 1,000 times, but if deep down you're in conflict, doubt, or resistance, the sound will just echo. But a single phrase, spoken with real alignment, full presence, with coherence between body, mind, and heart, can cross dimensions. It can restructure your field. It can completely shift the direction of your life. Thoth called this the living word, the sound that doesn't just communicate, it commands. And to him, every human being has this power, but almost no one knows how to use it because we were taught to use words to fill silence, to seduce, manipulate, or please, but not to create, much less to co-create with the universe. Now stop and think. What have you been saying about yourself over the last few days? Look closely, not what you say out loud, but what you whisper inside when you mess up, when you fail, when you look in the mirror, when you're alone. because that's also the word. And if there's one thing the field doesn't do, it's differentiate whether what you say is a joke, an exaggeration, or just venting. It picks up the frequency, and it responds to the vibration. Phrases like, "I'm stupid," "I'm a failure," "I can't," "this will never change" may seem harmless day to day. But on the vibrational plane, they're direct commands to the field, and as Thoth taught, everything repeated with emotion becomes programming. The mind records, the body memorizes, and the field obeys. Now imagine what happens when those phrases have been said for years, since childhood, by you or by others. Imagine the weight of those words running like unconscious code in your system. You don't notice it, but they're still vibrating, shaping your relationships, your choices, your limits. And if you've tried to change your life but something always seems to pull you back, maybe what's holding you isn't the past. It's the words you still repeat about it. Words that reinforce the pain. Words that keep alive an identity that should have already been dissolved. Words that feed a vibrational pattern that no longer matches who you're becoming. Thoth said that creation begins with sound, not thought, because sound carries structure. And once structure is formed, it tends to manifest. That's why every time you speak badly about yourself, even as a joke, you're unknowingly building vibrational walls around yourself. Walls that limit what the field can return. You can do every practice in the world, meditate, visualize, breathe, study. But if you're still programming yourself negatively through the word, you'll live in internal conflict, because your vibration will stay fragmented, and a fragmented vibration creates a fragmented reality. Now, honestly, how many times a day do you put yourself down with words? Because if you're still doing that, even without realizing it, you're writing the script of your own collapse. Because if you're programming your field with negative words, even without meaning to, the universe is just following orders. And that brings us to a turning point that completely changes how you understand reality. You can have the best intentions, the purest desire, the most sincere will to change your life, but nothing happens. Nothing changes. It feels like you're stuck in a cycle that doesn't respond to your effort. And then comes the sabotaging thought. Am I doing something wrong? Actually, the right question is, what am I vibrating? Thoth said this clearly. The universe doesn't respond to what you consciously think. It responds to what you vibrate dominantly. And that means even if you want peace, if your dominant vibration is fear, insecurity, anger, or mistrust, that's what the field will reflect, because the field doesn't negotiate, it just mirrors. And as uncomfortable as that may sound, this is one of the most liberating keys there is. Because when you understand that everything you're living right now is a reflection of the frequency you hold most strongly, you step out of the victim role. You stop looking outside for what you haven't built inside. You start taking responsibility for what you're putting out, not out of guilt, but out of awareness. Most people live disconnected from this understanding. They want a new relationship, but they're still vibrating resentment from the last one. They want abundance, but they're stuck in fear of not having enough. They ask for freedom, but keep vibrating control and rigidity. And the field picks up exactly that. It doesn't hear your requests, it feels your state. That's why practices that only work at the thought level don't last long term, because it's not what you mentally wish for that determines your reality. It's the vibration you sustain in your body, in your emotions, in your habits, in your automatic reactions. And that vibration is deeper, older, more authentic than any passing intention. The mind might say, I want to change, but the body could still be stuck in a scarcity pattern. The heart might still be in pain. And that combination of vibrations is what the field will pick up as the truth. Thoth used to say, don't try to fix the outer world. It's just a mirror. If you want to see the change, adjust the original reflection, and that reflection starts within. in how you feel, in how you interpret. In the frequency you choose to repeat every day, even without realizing it. And here's something few people notice. The dominant frequency isn't the one you access during isolated spiritual practices. It's the one that's present most of the time. When you wake up, when you drive, when you're alone, when no one's watching. It's that silent, constant state that shapes your reality. You can spend an hour visualizing abundance, but if you spend the rest of the day worrying about debt, feeling insecure, comparing yourself to others, doubting yourself, the dominant vibration will be fear, and that's the one the field will recognize as real. And if it's sustained long enough, reality bends, not because it's punishment, but because it's a mirror, a perfect mirror, impersonal, precise. And you might even fool the world, use beautiful words, look aligned on the outside. But the field feels. It feels what you feel. It knows your true state before you even notice it. So, if life is reflecting chaos back to you, it's not the chaos that needs to be fought. It's the vibration that needs to be revised. It's the internal pattern that needs to be dissolved. And that's not done with effort. It's done with presence, with truth, with vibrational responsibility. Because when you understand this and start holding a new frequency with consistency, something extraordinary happens. Reality inevitably starts to shift. And when reality starts to shift, you realize it's no longer just a theory or a distant promise. It's something happening now, live, right in front of your eyes. But then, the inevitable question comes, how, in practice, do I change this dominant frequency? How do I really alter my vibrational field so that it emits a new signal to the universe and starts receiving something different in return? The answer isn't out there, it's in you. And it doesn't require complex formulas or elaborate rituals. What Thoth left behind are simple principles, but deeply powerful. Because true transformation doesn't happen when you try to control everything around you. It happens when you learn to access, with awareness, your inner state, the 0 point of your field, the place where everything begins to be created. And that's exactly where the practice begins. A practice that seems too simple for the ego to accept, but carries within it an ancient power. A power to reprogram what's been running in the background of your mind and body for decades. A power to shift the vibrational pulse you've been sustaining without realizing it. Start by breathing, not just any way, but with presence. Inhale to the count of 5. Hold your breath for 2 seconds. Exhale slowly, counting to 5 again. Do this for a few minutes, not just to calm down, but to silence the internal noise and enter physiological coherence. Because when your breath changes, your mind changes, your field changes. Now bring up a feeling, but not desire. Don't focus on what you want. Focus on the emotion you'd feel if it were already real. Feel as if you're already living it. No rush, no forcing. Just allow yourself to sink into the vibration of what's already been achieved. Joy, gratitude, peace, expansion. Feel it as if it's now. In that state, visualize that feeling expanding. Imagine it flowing from the center of your chest like a wave of light. No effort, no control. Just see that vibration spreading around you, touching the space, connecting with the field, breathing with the universe. And then, let go. Let go of control. Let go of the need to prove, to measure, to understand. Just stay there, surrendered, as if nothing else needs to be done. Because in that moment, nothing else does need to be done. You've already transmitted. The field has already received. The movement has already been triggered. This simple cycle, conscious breathing, realized feeling, vibrational expansion, and surrender, has the power to resynchronize your frequency. And when that happens, you're not the one chasing change. change starts finding you. People, signs, intuitions, coincidences. Everything starts to rearrange. But not because you forced it, because you allowed it. This is the true Hermetic magic, not the kind that manipulates the external, but the kind that reorganizes the internal. Because when the field changes from within, the world changes as a consequence. But pay attention. Don't practice this as a magic trick. Practice it as real alignment. Because if it's done only with the mind, without presence, without truth, the field will feel it, and the results will be confusing, fragmented, frustrating. Now, if it's done with full surrender, something might happen faster than you expect, and the results almost never come the way you imagine. And the results, when they come, are hardly ever predictable. Because the universe doesn't give you what you want in a straight line. It first tests your field. It brings back everything that still needs to be seen, everything that was repressed, everything that's out of alignment. And this is where the true mirror law starts working at full force. Up until now, maybe you thought the universe only reflected your strongest desires, your most frequent thoughts, or your clearest emotions. But Thoth said something deeper. The universe reflects the sum of everything you are, including what you pretend not to feel, including what you hide from yourself, including the shadows you'd rather not face. You think you're vibrating positivity, but deep down, you're carrying guilt. You say you want love, but you're still vibrating rejection. You desire abundance, but you deeply fear you're not enough. And all of that is being reflected. All of it is part of the game. Because the universe doesn't respond to the character you created to survive. It responds to the being that silently vibrates behind the role you play every day. And maybe that's why it feels like, even when you're trying, things still spiral out of control. Because a part of you is still hidden, still hasn't been revealed, still operating as noise in your vibrational field. And the universe can't ignore that. It has to reflect it, because that's the agreement, that's the code, that's the mirror. And when you start to understand that, the game changes, because it's no longer enough to appear aligned. Now, you have to be. And to truly be means facing what you feel when no one's watching. It means noticing your impulsive reactions, your silent thoughts, the judgments you project onto others that really say more about you. Because all of that is shaping your reality right now, whether you're aware of it or not. Thoth warned, know thyself, because the universe already knows you. It's not waiting for you to be ready. It's just mirroring whatever is dominant in your field. So the more you try to hide from yourself, the more life starts to show you. Through situations, through people, through repeated conflicts that scream truths you refuse to accept. And that's where the mirror law becomes a relentless teacher. It doesn't soften. It doesn't adjust for your comfort. It reveals. It brings things up. It presses until you look. Because if you don't do it by choice, the field will do it out of necessity, and it does it with mastery. You attract someone who touches your oldest wound. You enter a financial cycle that exposes your deepest insecurity. You face a rejection that uncovers the abandonment you tried to shove under the rug. That's not bad luck. It's vibrational precision. It's soul math. And when you start to see that nothing is random, that everything is showing you something, the initial shock gives way to clarity. You begin to see that the universe isn't against you. It's working in your favor, just in its own way, with mirrors, with echoes, with reflections. And if you don't like what you're seeing, there's no use in breaking the mirror. What needs to change is the image it's reflecting. Now take a deep breath. Because if you keep hiding from your truth, the field will do the work you've been avoiding. And it won't ask for permission, because when the field moves, it doesn't check in with your rational mind. It simply responds. And this is where most people freeze. Because they're expecting control, formulas, ready-made methods. But the universe, according to Thoth's teachings, doesn't work with formulas. It responds to coherence, and coherence is not something you fake, it's something you embody. There's no point saying 1,000 times that you're ready if the vibration in your body is still stuck in fear, pride, or illusion. Vibrational coherence happens when what you think, what you feel, and what you do are in resonance. No internal conflict. No self-deception. It's like suddenly you become a single field, emitting one clear message to the universe. And when that happens, it hears you, and more than hears you, it responds with mathematical precision. Thoth called this a portal, not in the mystical sense of a glowing dimensional hole, but as a state of internal activation that opens up previously inaccessible possibilities. The portal is you. It's your field when it enters full alignment, when there's no more noise between what you want and what you're vibrating, when desire stops being a request and becomes a natural extension of your presence. In that state, the impossible begins to give way, because what once seemed closed, blocked, or far away starts to reorganize. Circumstances change. Unexpected people show up. Ideas appear out of nowhere. Paths open up where there were only walls. But it's not magic. It's vibrational precision. This is the real operation of Hermeticism. It's not belief. It's not forced mentalism. It's frequency adjustment based on full awareness. It's the practice of living so aligned with yourself that the universe can no longer resist your vibration. It bows. It reorganizes. It translates your state into reality, and the longer you sustain that coherent field, the more stable the portal becomes. It's not something that opens by accident. It's activated through practice, through presence, through inner silence. And that's why so many people fail, because they want shortcuts. They want tricks, but the field doesn't respond to tricks. It responds to vibrational truth. If you're whole, the universe responds in wholeness. If you're fragmented, it responds with fragments. And when that portal opens, you no longer need to chase time, because time starts to adjust to you. Reality speeds up, slows down, bends, expands. What seemed like it would take years happens in days. What seemed unlikely materializes effortlessly, because at that point, you've stopped acting from the outside in, and you've started manifesting from the inside out. But here's a warning. This state doesn't work with masks. The universe won't sustain a portal if you're still playing games with your own truth. Either you go in whole, or the portal won't recognize your presence. And the portal doesn't recognize your presence, because Thoth was clear. The code is pure, but it doesn't judge. It simply responds. And here comes a warning that almost no one talks about, because it demands responsibility. In the last records attributed to him, especially in the more advanced tablets, Thoth leaves something that sounds more like a warning than a teaching. A reminder for those who dare to activate the vibration without being prepared to hold its consequences. He speaks of the corruption of frequency, a state where the seeker touches the code but still carries misaligned intentions. Inflated ego, desire for control, lust for power over others. At that point, the frequency no longer responds with harmony. It echoes distortion, and that distortion doesn't stay contained, because everything vibrates in a network. A field altered by pride or ambition spreads, and the ancients knew those distortions create chain effects: emotional, physical, social, even environmental. What seemed like just an isolated ego thought turns into collective collapse. That's why many who tried to use these principles just to attract fame, power, or manipulation ended up facing unexpected consequences. Inner chaos, extreme anxiety, financial ruin, intensified conflicts. Because the code doesn't obey desire, it amplifies what you are, And if what's vibrating is fragmented, reality will be too. This is a key point in Thoth's teachings. The vibrational code is impersonal but absolute. It responds to everything, even if your conscious intention is good. If the vibration is misaligned, the field doesn't forgive. It reflects, and it reflects hard. Many disasters we treat today as random might have actually been responses to out-of-alignment vibrational patterns, a collective field in collapse generated by distorted collective thoughts, repressed emotions, frequencies activated without responsibility. And this brings us to what Thoth called the hardest step of true initiation, because to align with the universe, it's not enough to understand the code. You have to let go of who you thought you were. That's the part that pushes most people away. Because now it's no longer about gaining something, it's about losing. Not things, but layers. Layers of masks, imposed desires. Characters created to please or to survive. Thoth said, "He who finds himself no longer desires, he manifests." That means real manifestation doesn't come from need. It comes from state, and that state only arises when the ego collapses. You don't access the field by force. True access requires death. Death of the false self. Death of what you projected to the world but never truly were. And this is where most people pull back, because it hurts, because the ego will resist. It will scream. It will try to convince you that without it, you'll disappear. But it's only when you die symbolically to what you're not that true alignment begins. And the field responds with a force that transforms everything. And at this point, something begins to shift in silence. It's no longer about knowing, not even about understanding. It's something that pulses, vibrates, a feeling in the body, a presence that intensifies between thoughts. By now, if you've made it this far, something has already been activated. Because Thoth didn't offer knowledge to be admired. He delivered frequency, and frequency, when it resonates with the inside of the seeker, begins to act, with or without permission. You might try to go back to routine, to the old mental programming, but you'll realize everything now feels different. What used to distract you no longer satisfies. What used to make sense now feels strange. That's because the field, that vast living organism you used to call reality, has started to mirror your new state. Yes, you're being responded to, constantly. And the real question is no longer does it work? The question now is, will you sustain it? Because the field doesn't pause. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It only mirrors. And if you falter, it will mirror that wobble too. If you fall, it'll show you. If you persist, it will bend the impossible before you. But understand, there's no going back. And now comes the most dangerous, most transformative, and most simple point of all. Thoth never wanted to create followers. He didn't want temples, cults, dogmas. He wrote for those who could read beyond the eyes. He taught for those who could hear beyond the ears. He gave the symbols, not to be worshipped, but to be decoded by those who are beginning to remember. Because the true master is the one who awakens the master in you. And now that the code has been touched, you need to know the most explosive truth Thoth hid in layers. You're not vibrating the universe. You are the universe vibrating in the form of consciousness. You don't access the field. You are the field. You don't manipulate reality. You are reality, taking shape based on what you vibrate, feel, think, fear, or love. Everything you've seen up to now, all these words, ideas, images, sensations, were a mirror. A reflection carefully designed to remind you of what's always been inside you. None of this was external. No truth was imposed. No wisdom came from outside. You just needed to remember where it was. And now you hold the key in your hands. Not a symbolic, mental, or metaphorical key, but the real one. the living latent frequency that organizes itself around the one who holds their coherence firmly. And now comes the final question, the one that separates those who touch the mystery from those who dive into it. Will you use it, or will you go back to sleep? If you made it this far, it wasn't by accident. Something in you already knew, already felt. And now that the vibration has been activated, tell me, when was the moment you felt the field respond? Drop it in the comments. Because this exchange is part of the process. You manifest when you share, and sometimes one phrase from you can be the trigger to awaken someone who's reading. And if you want to support this channel more directly, so we can keep spreading content like this around the world, the access is in the description. Every bit of help, no matter how small, vibrates in expansion. And you already know, the field feels everything. And before you go, wait just one more second. We've picked out a special video for you to keep this journey going. Click the video showing up on your screen now, because that's where the next frequency will find you. I'll see you there.